Y'all might not really know this about me, but I really do love World of Warcraft. After maybe a year-long relationship with old school RuneScape, or what I guess was just RuneScape back in the day, WoW was my first MMO, and almost all of my fondest memories of gaming come from my times playing World of Warcraft. I hold this game in such high regard, and I love it, but I'm gonna let you guess whether or not I'm playing it these days. Go ahead, guess. And you might be thinking, well, how can you sing such high praises of World of Warcraft, but not even be playing it? And that, my friend, is exactly what we're talking about today. The game we love and still aren't playing. It's no surprise to anyone that World of Warcraft's player base has slowly been diminishing. I mean, I feel like the player base of the whole MMO genre is slowly getting smaller, but certainly World of Warcraft's rate of player loss has exceeded that of just the MMO genre in general. This player loss has definitely been expedited over the past few years following Shadowlands' horrible experience, as well as just corporate controversies. And I don't just bring this up to kick a game while it's down. I bring it up because Dragonflight, its current expansion, is really pretty good. I mean, it's not the best, but it's far from a bad expansion. However, the player base size and numbers do not reflect this. In fact, there was more people at the end of Battle for Azeroth doing raiding and endgame content than there are right now. And I mean, y'all remember Battle for Azeroth, right? So what the heck is going on here? And the conclusion I've come to is that while expansion features and playstyles, if unenjoyable, will lose players, long-standing and underlying issues at the core of the game are going to cause far more veteran players to quit over time, and also be a much bigger barrier to entry for new people looking to start the game at all. And I mean, just think about trying to be a new player in this game. That would be so overwhelming. I have a lot of friends I would like to try and get into this game, but I just don't think it's going to be worth it for them. They're absolutely going to be overwhelmed, and I feel like it's going to take months before they even know what the hell's going on. Sure, they've done a good job at revamping the new player experience, but once you're outside of that, you're kind of just out of the frying pan into the fire. And this really just brings us to the first big issue of World of Warcraft, why it can't get new players and why it often loses the interest of its core players. This game is just too damn complicated nowadays, and that applies to almost every facet of the game at this point. I mean, for example, I, as a veteran player of almost 15 years, still won't even touch PvP nowadays because it's too overwhelming for me. I mean, not only do I have to know all my normal abilities and everyone else's normal abilities, I now have to remember the PvP talents and the modifications to the abilities that those do, and then all the passive. It's so much. And that's coming from someone who's played this game for a very long time. But beyond all that, look at the rotation of the DPS classes these days, and it's insane. Same situation here. For 10.1, I was maining Mage. I never played Mage, so I thought, hey, this could be fun. Let's give it a try. And I thought, hey, you know what? Arcane's a really cool spec. Let's try and learn it. I went to Wowhead to try and find me a guy that'll show me a nice clean rotation layout. And when I got there, it was one of the fastest nope moments I've ever had in World of Warcraft. I mean, seriously, what the hell is this? And sure, I'm cherry picking the most extreme example, but take any spec with a medium amount of difficulty and put a new player into it. Those days or that week you take just trying to learn it and get semi good at it. Okay, you've been playing for a decade. Now give that to someone who's brand new and watch them struggle for a month maybe. And that's for one spec of one class. And let's say that new player gets that rotation down in 2 weeks. Perfect. Now it's time to try out your first Mythic Plus dungeon. But it turns out the one time you actually ran this dungeon while leveling, maybe you didn't remember every single specific pathing and ability of every boss and mob, so you wipe the group and get kicked instantly. I mean, you know, it's fine. That happens. You know, let's just go try out the raid, see what goes on in there. The raid group you join wipes on the first boss, and guess what? Since you were in the bottom 3 DPS, you're brand new, just trying to learn your rotation and the content, you're gone. You get told your DPS is too low, you're not good enough, and you're removed from the raid. And don't even lie to yourself and say this wouldn't happen to a new player, or like this doesn't happen all the time. I mean, hell, we're the ones guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. I mean, we're in the raid failing on a boss or something, and I see the bottom of those charts on DPS, and I'm thinking, wondered if we could get this done if you weren't here. And this is just the overall mindset of all the veteran WoW players, is everything is so efficiency driven. It drives you crazy. You find yourself acting out of character and really just behaving like an ass. There's just no time for new players. How many of these experiences are you able to get through before you just say, I'm done with this game? I mean, even myself, I find myself getting anxious in raids because I want to perform well. I don't want to mess up everything for everyone else. And I've been doing this a long time. And honestly, I don't want a video game I'm playing to be a major source of anxiety for me. Once upon a time, I was anxious after killing a boss to see, you know, what was going to drop. I was excited anxious, but now I'm just anxious trying to do the content before even getting the loot. This is really just the tip of the iceberg here. I mean, just think about add-ons for a second. Another thing that really stops me from wanting to get people into this game is the fact that I tell them, okay, you have to go download this game, get that all set up and everything like that. But then you need to download all these add-ons to manipulate the UI of this game. And you also need to know how to function these and use them all perfectly to get things how you want them and how to be optimized best. Like, they're not gonna have any idea what I'm talking about and be so confused. And oh man, God forbid if any new player wants to try tanking or healing, you are just setting yourself up to get flamed. And then yeah, have fun helping them set up Healbot or Voodoo and making sure they can maintain that themselves. That's gonna work great, I'm sure. There are just so many barriers to entry when it comes to new players with World of Warcraft, and it's really hard to see actually anyone new getting into this and thinking, I want to stick with this. This is cool. Which is sad to me because the the new player experience for World of Warcraft used to be one of the most absolute strong points. We as long-term players can't even keep track of all the stuff we need to do on a daily or weekly basis at this point. How many of you guys as long-term players had to download a week or to remind you everything you needed to do daily or weekly in Dragonflight? I mean, there's just so many things, from getting specific chests, doing different events, getting your renown up, doing your crafting. Oh yeah, that's another thing, crafting. There's just so much to learn and take in here that you're gonna have to be extraordinarily driven to try and learn all this stuff and actually get good at it anytime in the foreseeable future. And I'm not saying it's impossible. There's definitely those who can pull it off. I'm just saying it's gonna be a massive undertaking and you gotta be ready for that. So yeah, that's my point one. Kind of went off the rails there, but I guess the second biggest thing I can think of is that the game is just so bloated. I mean, there's so many mounts, there's so many pieces of gear, so many gear sets, so many different pets to collect, so many titles and achievements. And what happens when you have too many cool things? They all become devalued. When was the last time you looted a piece of gear and got genuinely excited and were just like, oh, nice. The last mount you earned or achieved that actually made you want to show it off. And with so many titles in the game, I don't even know what they stand for anymore. You could have done the most impressive thing in the game, but I'd have no clue. And this doesn't even get to scratch the surface of things like, you know, you look in the in-game shop and everything looks cooler there than what you can actually get legitimately in the game. Like, did you guys see that fish mount that came out for the subscription bonus recently? I mean, it's just subjective, but I think that mount is so cool. Like, that's one of the coolest mounts they put out in years. I mean, you just take a look at the quality of that mount's like animation and the particle effects and the sound effects that it comes with. Like, it's way more impressive than what we normally get in a mount. And I can't think of one mount this entire expansion that really made me think, wow, that's an impressive mount, just like that one did. And coming from amazing looking achievement mounts and 1% raid drop mounts, this is just kind of sad. You know, a great part of WoW is that you have 20 years of development behind it and just so much content to get into. However, a major negative of World of Warcraft is that there is 20 years of development behind it. The game is bloated. And I have to imagine, coming in as a new player, it's kind of like an inside joke that has been growing for 20 years and you're just trying to get in on that joke right now. It's an awkward feeling, and even after you get over that, you still may never feel like you belong. Then you have systems like the trading post, and while I think this is overall a very positive thing for the game, I think it's really cool. Why is it the mounts and items we're getting from that are so much cooler than what we're actually getting from the game from drops? Between netherwing drakes and now a crab mount, it's just insane. It begins to feel less like a cool, fun system that's been implemented and more just like a FOMO system. But yeah, we're kind of getting off track here, but regardless, the game is just really bloated. There's way too much stuff in it. Between mounts, pets, achievements, title, gear sets, we're really just getting to a point where everything has kind of been devalued. And honestly, why else do we play MMOs other than to flex our cool mounts and show off our badass and impressive armor? But beyond the game being overly complex nowadays and being bloated with 20 plus years of content, I would have to say the single biggest thing that keeps me from playing World of Warcraft consistently is it being all seasonal content now. And people are pretty opinionated on this. I think some people really vibe with the seasons. They're cool with the resets. But I think there's a pretty large majority of people that just don't like it. How can I care about getting better gear if in 6 months it's going to be all invalidated anyways? Every so often I do get an itch to go back and play Dragonflight, and then I just think in the back of my mind, but why? What am I going to get out of this? Just to hop back on the gear treadmill where heroic raiding gear is going to be replaced by Mythic Zero next season? It's extremely deflating, and honestly is probably the biggest reason I just can't stay interested. And while I do understand there are some benefits to seasonal content, like not having to go back and do old content no one's really doing anymore just to catch up to current stuff, no one likes having their gear be invalidated overnight. Not only that, but the content being invalidated overnight. And they are doing work to bring raids from earlier in the expansion back towards the end. I think that's really cool of them. However, it just feels bad, man. And not only does it invalidate the content like the most recent raids here, it pretty much invalidates all the open world content and events as well. Even the researcher event from 10.1 is almost impossible to cap out nowadays because no one's doing it. So the 10.0 events out in the open world are certainly not getting a lot of people and are certainly not getting capped out. If you're lucky, you might find a raid in LFG to help you get all the way there, but it's not likely. Again, because there was a season gear reset and the gear that was given from these events was not updated. So unless you're just kind of mindlessly hard grinding for renown, you don't really have any reason to go back. I miss my soup events, man. They were fun. And at the end of the day, I guess it just feels like an arbitrary arms race against no one. You just feel like a mouse on a wheel trying to get a bunch of nameless gear that has a few extra stats that you're not going to notice the difference of, only to try and complete harder content that in the end doesn't feel fulfilling anyways. Because again, you're getting more nameless gear with a few arbitrary increases in stats that you don't actually care about. And this might not be you. You might enjoy the game perfectly well. I think that's great. I really hope you do enjoy the game. Every so often, I do as well. I'm just kind of speaking out of the reasons why I, and I think a lot of others, aren't able to stick with the game. The heart and soul that Blizzard used to put into it just isn't there anymore, and you can tell. And the reason I talked about the complexity and the bloat and the seasonal content is because these are the three biggest issues I have that don't seem to have a realistic fix. I mean, you can't dumb down the game. You can't just take away people's buttons. The complexity is what it is now. And the same thing with bloat. I mean, they can't just take away your items and they can't stop putting stuff in the game. So this is a problem that's never going to get better. People kind of joke around about the game needing a reset, and I kind of agree with it. And then when it comes to seasonal content, I mean, you've got things like the Race to World First. These are completely influencing the decision to do seasonal content. There's no way that's ever going to change with things like that going on. You've also got the Mythic Plus Invitational that relies on all this stuff, and that's definitely not going anywhere, even if people don't watch it. And at the end of the day, you're left just feeling like these are the types of players that are being catered to. Those in the Race to World First or the Invitational for Mythic Plus. The average player's experience just isn't relevant anymore. I'm not trying to be negative for the sake of it. I want World of Warcraft to be an amazing game. I love it. But things will never get better if we don't point out flaws. Look what happened when everyone complained in Shadowlands. We got Dragonflight. That's a step in the right direction. It's just important to be vocal about these things, and I think a lot of other people feel the same way. And like I said, I don't know if any of these have any solution, but I would love to hear from you guys. Do you have any creative solutions for either of these three problems? The game being overly complex, overly bloated, or the seasonal content? Do you even find these three things to be issues? At the end of the day, all I can say is I appreciate you watching all the way to the end. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want some more of me. You guys can catch me streaming over on Twitch. I'll leave the link down in the description. But seriously, thank you guys. I appreciate you. And until next time, peace.